Are you feeling hopeless about weight loss? Well, this video is for you. We're going to talk about how do I get rid of this hopeless feeling that I'll never lose weight. I'm Haley Pulley, head coach here at My Body Tutor, here with Adam Gilbert, the founder of My Body Tutor. And today we're going to talk about ways to defeat that hopelessness and realize you can do it. You can lose the weight. Adam, get us started.
Yeah, well, the good thing is hope is a formula, right? And we'll get right to it. So the formula is number one, having a clear and defined goal, right? You must have a clear and defined goal. Number two, it's having a pathway to reach your goal, right? There has to be a roadmap, there has to be a blueprint, there has to be a game plan in order to reach your goal. And number three, and most importantly, is you believing you can actually follow the plan, right? And the challenge is, so often we start these crazy diets or programs or plans, whatever it might be, and consciously or subconsciously, we know we can't stick with it for more than a few weeks at most, right? So it's really, really important that you feel comfortable with the plan from the start.
Okay, so if we're talking about coming at this from a place of hopelessness, we could actually take that formula and look at the converse of it, right? So you said number one was having a clearly defined goal or destination or thing you want to achieve. So we might understand it that we're feeling hopeless because we're actually not really sure what it is we're trying to do, right? Like specifically, right? Yes, lose weight. Okay, but I think it's really important to get really specific about that goal. And perhaps that's why it feels so hopeless because it becomes sort of this like blob of, I just need to lose weight. What do you think about that?
I agree. There has to be a very compelling why, right? Why are you doing this, right? Why does it matter? Why will life be better? Why will life be more fun when you lose the weight or improve your health and fitness? Because to your point, if you're just saying, I want to be healthier, that's very vague, right? The more specific you can be, the more aspirational you can be, the better.
Right? It's like getting in the car and saying, I'm going to Albuquerque versus I'm going west. Right? Like we could go west for a really long time. West because we're on the East Coast here, but it gets specific. Okay, Albuquerque, and then what? And why Albuquerque? And what do you expect to experience there? And what do you expect to find along the way? Which kind of brings us into that number two piece of the formula. Again, thinking about the converse. Okay, I'm hopeless. And perhaps it's because I don't have a clear path to get to where I'm going.
Right. So specifically when it comes to weight loss is what's the plan, right? What are you going to do on a daily basis? What are you going to do on a weekly basis, right? So often we're obsessed with, results or food or focus on behaviors. But, the idea is to have a plan, right? Each day I'm going to try to do this. Each day I'm going to do that. Each week I'm going to aim for this. That's the plan, right? What am I aiming for to eat? What am I, trying to avoid, etc.
And I think it is important too to understand that it does need to be broken down into daily, weekly, kind of monthly chunks because often the journey of weight loss is a really long one. I mean, I know if we got in the car and drove, to California, that's a long one. We're going to have checkpoints along the way in ways we're going to get to each of those checkpoints. So it is important not only to have a clear path to get there, but to break it down into smaller segments because it's too overwhelming.
Exactly right.
Okay, so the last piece of the formula, and this one kind of seems like, well, okay. But you mentioned like you got to believe you can take those steps. So give us a little more information on that.
Yeah, I think this is the most important one because you really have to believe on every level that you can follow the plan, no matter what, right? No matter what. And again, as I said earlier, so often we start these plans and consciously or subconsciously, we don't feel like we can stick with it for more than a few weeks. You have to feel like you can stick with it no matter what. And the idea is if you don't feel like you're going to stick with it, and again, whatever level it is, then there's a part of you that's like, well, what's the point? Why even bother? And you might, follow it for a day or two, maybe even a week. But then there's a part of you that's like, well, I know I can't stick with this indefinitely. So what's the point of, trying? So we have to make sure the plan feels entirely doable, entirely sustainable, and practical from the start.
Right. But also give permission for the plan to evolve, right? I think that's the other thing is we kind of see it like, okay, once the plan is in place, I have to go with the plan as it was from start to finish. But plans change, and how sustainable something is has permission to change while you're on your way because you change, right? You might change your mind. your physical state is going to change, right? So I think the other important piece is if you find yourself not believing you can continue with that plan, it's not a signal to stop the trip. It's not a signal to set everything down and quit. It's a signal to pivot and go, okay, I can either continue on this path and lose hope, or I can pivot, I can evolve, and I can change the course, but still work my way towards where I'm going.
Right. I think a part of that is, in order to feel hopeful, you have to allow yourself some self-compassion. You have to allow yourself the humanity to adjust the plan, as you said, because our most successful clients, they've learned to turn down the dial versus turning it off, right? So let's say you have a really challenging week, it's extremely busy, etc. Part of us would be like, well, I can't follow the plan to the T, so then I'm not going to follow it at all. Instead, the goal is to turn down the dial or adjust the plan to allow yourself the flexibility, to allow yourself the room to do everything else you need to do, and keep going, right? It's like, if we're going to California from New York, things come up along the way, right? There might be, a pothole, we might blow out a tire, the engine might need to be checked, whatever it might be. We have to allow for that. We're not going to just turn around or quit the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great point too. And I think that is the hardest thing for people, in this day and age in particular, to grasp is like, look, it doesn't mean stopping. It doesn't mean setting it down. It's pulling back, it's pivoting, it's allowing some space for working on a couple other things, and then we carry on.
Exactly. Our most successful clients have learned how to stick with it while being less than perfect. And a big part of this comes down to that. It's, having a plan, but allowing yourself the humanity to adjust the plan, and realizing things come up, things happen. So, some weeks you might, roll your sleeves up and go a little harder and turn up the dial. And some weeks you're allowing yourself to turn down the dial, but you're never turning it off. Because again, all or nothing leads to nothing every single time. And we obviously don't want to end up with nothing.
100%. I mean, Adam, you never know when the world's largest ball of yarn is going to turn up on the roadside. You got to factor in time to check it out, right? But
Exactly.
Then carry on. All right. So to recap, right?
Well, let me just add one more thing, and
Okay.
I think we touched on this, but just to be very specific, if you're not feeling hopeful, ultimately you need a plan that you feel like you can stick with no matter what, absolutely no matter what. And what that means is if that includes an indulgence or two per day, then that's great, right? Because if you feel like you can stick with it, having an indulgence or two per day versus trying to be perfect and burning out after a week, that's obviously not going to get you to where you want to be. It's far more effective to go 80 miles an hour, using this analogy of going to California, versus trying to go 100 miles an hour and only burning out. That's not sustainable, right? So allow yourself to stick with a plan that is absolutely doable no matter what. And if that includes an indulgence or two, that's fine. So be it. Far more effective to do that than to try to be perfect only to burn out.
Yeah. And that's really hard for people to embrace. I mean, I know you've experienced it. I experienced it with my clients. It's really hard. Like, I'm going to make progress by being less than perfect, by factoring in things that are realistic to my life and my current state of being. Yeah, as it turns out, you get out of your own way.
Right. And, I think rationally we know this, but we're all irrational creatures. We're all irrational beings, and there's a part of us that wants to go all in 100%, but that's just not sustainable. So, again, the most successful clients we work with are comfortable being less than perfect. They're comfortable with turning down the dial versus turning it off. That's not an option. And they allow themselves the humanity and are self-compassionate enough to do that. They're able to do that.
Awesome. All right. So if you're sitting there watching this video and you're feeling hopeless, 3 keys, 3 pieces to the formula. Number 1, know where you're going. Get really, really clear on it. Number 2, design a pathway to that destination. And number 3, believe wholeheartedly you can stick with it. All right. And that will bring you the hope you seek. All right. See you next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you liked that video, check out the link for another great video right here.
And if you're having trouble staying consistent, if you feel like you know what to do but just can't seem to do it,
I invite you to check out our coaching program. It's in the link below. We offer one-to-one accountability, coaching, support. I know you're going to love it, and let's go. Together we can make it happen.